Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to TN Tech, our weekly discussion panel looking at what's happening in tech law and the wider world. I'm David Chaplin, editor of Computers and Law, and this week I'm delighted to be joined by Anna Cook, a partner at Bristow's, a former SCL trustee and now a member of the SCL Advisory Board, Himesh Chavda, Senior Legal Counsel for Europe at Orange Business Services, and Deirdre Kilroy, a partner in the Technology and Innovation team and head of intellectual property at Matheson in Dublin. Of course, while we are talking, the chat panel is open. So if you've got any comments about what we're talking about or anything to add, please do send them in and help keep the conversation going. Before we get started, just want to highlight a couple of other online events coming up in the next week or two from the SCL. Next Tuesday, I mentioned this before last week, Professor Chris Marsden will chair a panel of leading IT law thinkers to discuss the potential impact of the Digital Services Act. On the 24th of February, the Scottish branch of the Society is hosting a Your Phone is Not Yours, the Death of Ownership in the Internet of Things event. That's online as well. Read more about both of those events on scl.org. So now turning to today's talking points, we're going to kick off with the GameStop saga that has been headline news over the past few weeks. Though now it's dropping down the headlines, a bit like its share price, which has gone from 400 to 50 in the last week or so. Himesh, I know this is a story that got you thinking about the implications for markets and things like that. What questions does it pose to our current regulation of trading?
Thanks, David, and hello to everyone. For me, the first thing is that although this is not strictly, this is very much a sort of capital markets issue, and we initially do not think of this sort of stuff as being an impact on technology. So when it comes to regulation, the first thing we think about of markets and share prices is naturally going to be the impact on markets and regulation around that. I work in-house and for a company that's listed in Paris and also New York Stock Exchange. So one of the things that one of the reasons this was of interest to me is that firstly, it's a very highly regulated industry and the way the markets work, and it needs to have a fair and balanced process every day so that companies are valued properly and that the entire market knows what's going on. But these trades are now slowly getting to be known as joke trades or joke companies because the regulation and the way it's normally these companies are traded seems to have just gone out the window. Social media seems to be running the share prices of a lot of these companies. And so for me, there's a huge interaction between how the markets work and how everyday technology is working. People are talking using social media and are able to drive what is traditionally a highly regulated industry to whichever direction they want. We initially saw this a few years ago, when Rage Against the Machine was made very popular and won the Christmas #1. And now it almost seems like Christmas is coming up, and let's bump up a share price of a company that we all love rather than its actual value. GameStop, as far as I understand, you mentioned it's gone down to $50. In September, it was only $10. Yeah. And it's obviously a company that people love. If you're a gamer, you know what the shop is. You probably bought lots of products from it, and have a sort of sentimental attachment to that company. And it sort of has lost a lot of business in the pandemic. And naturally, as things move more digital, we're seeing an awful lot of companies close, and that's happened to GameStop. But a lot of these new new traders who haven't got much to do apart from just talk on Reddit and other social media decided to just inflate the price artificially. And I found it quite amusing in the first instance. And in the second, if you are somebody that is very much, if you're a trader, if you're a personal investor, or you're somebody on social media, it impacts how you value the things around you and how you value the companies and the economy around you. I found it a general quite amusing from many angles, and I thought it'd be useful if we had a discussion around that, what people thought of it from a tech perspective and general law perspective.
And there's a couple of questions that arise from what you said there, to my mind, is that does social media, do we think social media has a role to play in moderating such behaviour? Like they try to moderate misinformation. I don't know whether it's possible. I don't know whether there is a role there. The other one is that it sort of it might almost become insider trading, isn't it? And market manipulation. And I believe actually they are now looking into this as market manipulation in the States. They have started investigating. The FBI is looking into this. And then the other angle that comes in is the small investor suddenly wasn't allowed to invest in this, and they get caught on a Robinhood trading platform, and they can't do the trading that they wanted to do. Are there any legal angles coming out of that? I mean, what does have you got any other thoughts, Deirdre or Anna? Deirdre?
Yeah, I think it was really interesting because you kind of I have sympathy for the technology companies because, they're providing a service, there's a chat room, and then suddenly an unexpected event occurs and they're at the heart of a play, they're being used as an instrument in a manner that wasn't anticipated. And it was interesting to see, like, when Himesh mentioned this as a story we might chat about first, my initial reaction was, is this one a story for us? Because as you said, it's kind of financial trading, but like it shows how, Facebook and Reddit are the two platforms that seem to have been used to choreograph some of these plays. And it must be hugely challenging for those providers to manage it. So, the instinct to turn off, and that Robinhood took, for example, they turned off the trades on these for a period of time. They then became part of the play because they turned off the play, So it was fascinating to watch. And, there are some actions now against them in terms of their terms and conditions. Did they have the right to do what they did? What approach needs to be taken? But I think it sort of highlights how, these spaces that we all, especially now, collaborate and work and play out our lives in, these social spaces are almost mini kingdoms. Anything can happen in them in any industry in relation to anything. And you have to kind of look at tech as almost that, it is a space where all sorts of things can happen in. And as tech lawyers, it's really interesting to watch the terms and conditions suddenly come into play in that way, unanticipated. Are they fit for purpose? Do they allow them to do what they need to do? Did they contemplate the activity that may be illegal on them? So I think it was a really interesting and continues to be a really interesting story.
I mean, I was struck by the impossibility of trying to regulate in this space. I mean, what you might turn the concept on its head. I mean, the traders were trying to cause some concerted harm and didn't mind losing their own money in the process. But if you were to promote, let's say, ethical investment because you want to promote that sort of promote better ecology or something like that. I mean, that seems to me that sort of conversation could easily also be shut down.
I think it's interesting as well that the traders themselves say, well, we just collectively did what big venture capital houses do, shorting stocks all the time. We just got together and did our own mini version of that, or mega version of that, I suppose you'd say.
Yeah.
But we did an action that others take all the time. We just joined together in a different way to do it. So it's interesting how you'd even come up with a rule against it that might not catch actors that are actively shorting and playing in that space generally.
It's also interesting what David mentioned a moment ago around insider trading, because this isn't quite insider trading. None of these players know what's going on. In fact, everybody knows that the company isn't doing so well. So there's sort of very open trading, if you like, but clear market manipulation. And although it is temporary market manipulation, it is nevertheless still market manipulation. So then what do you do about that? Because you've got the other angle of freedom of speech. I have a right to talk to my friends and whoever I want to online and discuss whatever topic I want to talk about. And this clearly isn't illegal. It isn't really, inciting anything illegal or anything like that. We're just talking about a company and everybody's ganged up to try and do something. And how do you regulate something like that? We're, I think, later on talking a bit more about internet regulation generally. And I think this is something that will come to pass over the years when we understand it more. It's not just GameStop, it's happened to Bitcoin, and it's happened to Tesla and another theatre company I read about called AMC. And I mean, a lot of these things involve Elon Musk. I don't know if Elon specifically needs to be held to account, but it looks like you've got these celebrities who've got a little bit of power as well. You can just tweet a company name and they can benefit from it. And that's amazing power to have, but really they haven't done any insider trading or what is, from a regulatory perspective, illegal or in breach. So I'd be interested to hear more about what, as regulators, we're going to see, if anything, in the coming years and months.
Well, I mean, my view is that it looks, I mean, this has exemplified the fact that there is activity going on there that would, in an ideal world from the regulator's point of view, be regulated. So I cannot but help see that there's going to be movement in this area somehow. What that movement might be is, as Anna said, is difficult to see. In my view, I don't know. Do you all agree on that?
But they're buying other things as well. They're buying commodities. They're buying silver.
Yeah.
That's right. That's true. Yeah, exactly.
So I mean,
markets regulated differently, aren't they? Yeah.
I mean, what does that mean? Yeah, I don't understand how it could be regulated.
Ever?
No, not something like that.
No. Well, I know Himesh has said, "Oh, what happens to my company? What happens if Orange suddenly had the had this kind of treatment to it?" Yeah, there'd be a. It can cause concern, can't it, for the corporations themselves and uncertainty.
It could do, yeah, absolutely. And if all of a sudden I bought some stocks in it, and then all of a sudden it went up, there could then be some claim that somebody inside was doing this and triggering it. I could see an angle like that. So it's quite dangerous if you're working in GameStop or any of these companies and you benefit from it. But if you're an outside trader with no connection, you almost get away with it, and there's no sort of comeback on you. I mean, one thing I was thinking about is we often have a tendency to think about regulators, but the companies themselves may be able to put a stop to it. I mean, I don't think it's any company's genuine interest to, artificially inflate their prices. There are certain benefits that can be had from it, like you could raise artificial funds from it, or you could benefit from it, but only if you've genuinely got a long-term, prospect of winning or actually growing your business. But otherwise, it's probably going to do more harm than good. But I think companies might need to take some ownership and say, to try and stop it, or to actually release some financial data so that there's a balance. I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, nobody's going to mind their stocks going up, but at the same time, there might be a lot of unexpected harm coming to people's way if they just blindly follow what the prices are.
Well, I think we all accept we haven't got any answers to this at the moment. It's just something to keep
That's
an eye
right.
on.
Yeah, exactly.
Comes up and what lessons to learn. Moving on a bit to where we are getting regulation, which is in the EU. Deirdre, you've spotted there's been a couple of movements, a couple of policy moves emanating from the EU over the last week, haven't there?
Yeah, what's interesting is to see the e-privacy regulation make its extremely slow progress through the legislative process in the EU. And now it's going to enter trilogue negotiations between the Commission, the Council and the Parliament. Like you might remember, there was some talk that they would hope to get the e-privacy regulation in at the same time as the GDPR. And here we are a number of years later waiting for it to make its progress through. And it's, probably, if not more so, lobbied than a lobbied piece of legislation like the GDPR is, and it seems to be very problematic. So I thought it was interesting this week to see the European Data Protection Supervisor. When you look at the role of that office and what it's intended to do, and now it's sort of positioning of itself as sort of almost a policy maker by its comments, kind of weighing in on the issue of certain use of certain types of technology and how they might be used. It makes it a very interesting piece of law to analyze going forward, and to see how it will come out the other end of the trilogue process, particularly this question about, you know, metadata tracking technologies, cookies, whether users should have consents built into the browsers, all of those questions, which really play out quite heavily, and actually probably partially in relation to what we just talked about as well. It'll be interesting to see how that emerges. And I think what will be interesting as well is to see where the UK goes, because it's one of the kind of laws that is making its way through that will have a big part to play in the privacy data space. But of course, now that the UK has left the EU, it has some options about how it closely attracts with that piece of legislation. And it's something that we in Europe are watching to see where the UK decides to, from a policy position, deviate from the European line. And it'll be really interesting to hear what the rest of you think about where the UK might go with that.
I mean, you've got the UK, the online safety bill, I think coming through at some point this year, which is intended to follow the same principles and concepts, and part of the UK's digital strategy. I think that the UK is going to continue to follow the EU on these principles and online safety and cybersecurity and things like that. I think we're being very much part of the, I say we've always been very much part of the whole data protection regime and the security regime, and in fact, a central part of European infrastructure and laws for all these years. Many of the European regulations have been, will continue to stay in place in the UK. And I don't see too much divergence. There's nothing here that sounds contradictory or in conflict with political principles or, UK interests versus EU interests. I think it's in both parties' interest to work together on this, so that there is a stronger union of security and principles and how we manage all of these things. As technology develops, it is cross-border. The way these technologies, the way the ad tech and martech and things like that are all working, it is going to be cross-border. And for those reasons, there's going to have to be similar regulation. Otherwise, companies won't be able to operate as fluidly as they'd like. In fact, you end up causing more tension and restriction. So I think that we're going to have very closely following legislation. And it may be vice versa. If this is an initiative that UK leads on, I'd feel that the EU may want to also follow suit on that.
I hope that the UK follows the EU, but I'm, I suppose, a bit more fearful that we've got a very illiberal government whose instincts are to hoard data and to intrude on people's privacy, and for whom, who are constantly attacking human rights. So I think we need to be watchful about how the balances are struck, and for those working with international companies to make sure that the company's values are reflected in what they do in the UK as best they can. Keep
Sorry. One of the things that in the EDPS opinion on the Digital Services Act, to get the right one, he actually goes as far to say is that pervasive advertising based on pervasive monitoring should be, heavily regulated, or if not made unlawful. If let's say Europe went that way, would the UK follow? And I'm interested, obviously, from the Irish point of view, is that a good thing, or would you support that move, or can you say? So Deirdre first, perhaps.
I mean, there are policy decisions to be taken, and the tech is neutral. The tech starts off neutral in some ways, and then you have to see how it can be used. And take a policy decision in relation to it. I mean, one of the topics I'm really interested in is in AI, and it's an area where there's kind of emerging policy that's crystallizing, moving towards law. And we're going to see, a number of pieces of EU law probably move towards capturing AI in a particular way in the next number of months. So there's reference to the Product Liability Directive being upgraded, the Radio Equipment Directive being upgraded, the Machinery Directive being upgraded, and also this potential, I think it's DG Connect, there may be proposals sort of Q2 around sort of a technology overlaying piece of legislation also. And when you look at other jurisdictions, they tackle AI in different ways. And whether you don't comment on the technology at all and just follow principles around harm or product liability is one option, or whether you actually look at the technology and try and legislate for it is a decision that has to be taken. So I think that some governments will probably look at an opportunity. The UK government could look at it as an opportunity to, from a business creation point of view, to have more liberal laws than perhaps the EU may adopt. And I guess, clients, there is a movement towards data localization because of some of the issues that have come out recently in relation to data that we see both the benefit and the negative of in Europe. So I guess I'd be sort of saying watch this space, and I think there might be a close alignment, but it might be at the edges and the differentiating where there's real, difference, that you see challenges coming up for companies to try and match, the jurisdictions and deliver a product that has consistent feeling to users across both, and that's true to the company's policy. So I think there's a lot more regulation coming. You can feel it all the time. We're reading, we're seeing new initiatives, and it feels like the need to keep on top of legislative reform is increasing, if anything. And I think probably the UK will use its independence in a way that will see some difference as it goes along. That would be my view.
Himesh, Anna, do you agree there that the UK we could use some leeway to be a bit more competitive, let's say, as a host for ad tech?
Absolutely, and we don't know which way it's going to go. I mean, we often look at this, and as lawyers, we have a tendency to look at it from a regulatory legal perspective. But I work very closely with sales teams and sales management, for instance, and sitting with them. We are often poles apart in thinking, but in order to be good lawyers and advisors, we have to know what our clients are thinking and what they want to do. And if we put ourselves in their shoes for a moment, I set up an online business of some sort. I want to compete with eBay or whatever new product I've got. And I find that I've got to comply with UK legislation, and then I've got to comply with EU legislation. And if I want to do business in America, I will comply with American legislation. And if they're poles apart in the online environment, the fluidity to which small businesses will be able to operate in the market will inevitably not happen as we'd like it to. It's only going to be the big companies that have got the legal power, they've got the resources that are going to be able to do these things. Smaller companies, the more agile companies, if you like, who want to just get on and do their work and have that entrepreneurial spirit and want to just make waves in the market, won't have the opportunity. And if we want to be competitive, in fact, if the EU want to be competitive, there's going to have to be a little bit of regulatory competition, if you like. Who's got a simpler regulatory model, for instance? Who's got less red tape? We've just seen that with the vaccine rollout, for instance, and that may continue. This Brexit debate may continue forever now. And we may see it in different industries. It's a very likely, there's a high likelihood of that. I do think that we're all still learning. We don't know how the technology is going to be evolving and what regulatory powers we'll have. But I do, as we get to know about it, we need to be able to put ourselves in different shoes and work through it that way.
Well, I think the government sees AI as a great strategic opportunity. I think I'm often struck when we've talk about these things or think about these things is that the real innovation actually has to take place in the insurance sector. I think, you know, almost all the questions end up there.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll move on to our next talking point, which I know is something you want to bring up, Anna, which, and I've got no apologies for this. We touched on working from home last week, but we're learning so much about the impact of working from home is having on our professional and personal lives. So I'm sure we'll keep returning to it. But you want to raise some thoughts on how remote working might having a negative impact on women in particular, was it? You know.
Well, yeah, I had an experience a couple of weeks ago where I was talking to someone, a slightly older gentleman who I know very well, and I found myself thinking how nice it was to see him slightly more comfortably dressed, sitting in his home office, and that it added a sort of warmth and weight to someone that was already very authoritative. And I guess that led me to think whether that was implicit bias and whether my implicit bias button has not been trained for the world of Zoom and video conferencing. I think I've picked up on a couple of stories which have said that employers and clients are becoming less tolerant of interruptions involving kids. Certainly if you're being dragged from pillar to post, you know, making lunch, coming back, doing a Zoom call, you may not be as spectacularly dressed as you would be in the office. So I guess I have some concerns about whether this could be regressive. So, you know, it's clear that this is an opportunity to progress in many ways, but whether we need to be more thoughtful about how we're reacting to the images and the faces that we see on the screen.
And as you say, the other thing you're talking about is that clients expect more formality, maybe working from home. Although I was having a discussion earlier today with somebody who said that they were in a meeting and everybody's wearing hoodies on account of the fact that it's freezing over here. But in a way, it's indirect discrimination is the problem. In employment law terms, we call it indirect discrimination. Is that the pressures of working from home, having that backdrop and having a clear space are going to be felt more on women and might be the problem. Yeah,
well, I mean, or for any associate or trainee. I mean, when you start in this business and you're on your way, you know, you go into the law thinking you know what the next steps are and how you're going to generate work and what networks you've got to build and how you're going to make an impact. And in the office, I said, well, the rules are a bit clearer. It's not clear that there are good rules now or how long this situation is going to last. So it's more, I think it's got two dimensions. There's the sort of opportunities, the lost opportunity dimension, but also, you know, how do you make the best of this situation? It seems to be a little bit more than just making sure that you've got the right light and that you pulled your window blind down and that kind of thing.
Deirdre, what's your experience?
I think it's a really interesting observation that Anna makes, because, you know, when I was thinking about this topic and I did a bit of Googling, it was interesting to see statistically women are higher in terms of taking time off, furloughing. The statistics are there. They're the ones that are dropping off, reducing, as opposed to it being an equal approach in arrangements. And I think what we all know how to do is, and it's, you know, certainly in Matheson, we had already got remote working and we had very good setup to go out, and we've been out since March. Our anniversary is about to come up on the 12th of March, actually. And I think doing your day-to-day job is fine, but what's a struggle for us all, and we're still in our careers trying to do and get on, is the politics of getting on and understanding. And it's a great leveler to get up, go to a building, walk in the building and sit down at a desk with everybody else there. It's a great leveler, we're all in it together. Whereas I even see kind of slightly different approaches taken in relation to the, you know, I've heard grumblings of, you know, parents versus single people, they have it easier than us and this sort of thing. And I hear other grumblings from other people, and that's because the leveling effect of the office is removed now, and it's much more difficult, I think, to progress or to deal with politics and what have you. And unfortunately, the comment has been made about women, but I'm sure it probably applies generally to any kind of minority. So diversity and inclusion must be getting hit generally in relation to this, I thought.
Himesh, have you got any insight on that? And your experience, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
As a tech company and as a global network provider, we've been working remotely for a long time, and it's something that I've been used to for quite a while. But this is it's a new thing for so many of us, and yet there's no standards, there's no kind of etiquette that anybody knows about. I was talking to a colleague of mine yesterday, following our conversation, just to understand from her perspective what she's seen, and she works as a senior sales consultant. So what is it like with the customers on a day-to-day basis? And one thing she noticed from a woman's perspective is that she personally felt if she's not got her video on, she's less able to make an impact, because if she's not seen, she's not going to be as heard as well. And we all need to be aware of that. I think if we're used to talking on the phone, but when we're interacting, where we're trying to understand each other and see our body language, etc., we need to be face to face a bit more. I think we need to have the courage to be face to face, and just get on in the home environment that we're in. But at the same time, it's really difficult if you've got kids running around, and often I have to keep shutting my video off because I've got to jump up and down, go upstairs or downstairs, depending on where the kids decide they want to be in any given moment. And that doesn't help you to work in any settled way. But what's good is, I hope this is temporary. I think we're going to get used to working remotely and with the technology, but I'm hoping that the consistency and the constant nature of it will be temporary, that you're going to have more, we all should have more of a choice. Are we going to go into the office, or have we got a bit of, relaxed time that we can work from home and work remotely? I think it's a difficult scenario. But in my view, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that it remains temporary and will resume to more of a choice, sort of perspective and way of working soon.
Okay, well, our half an hour is up indeed. Just one other thing we just wanted to mention, that just to highlight, it was another thing that's happened this week is the announcement of a cybersecurity council. We'll only spend a minute on this, but you picked this up, Himesh, that the cybersecurity council is going to be accrediting and training and setting standards for training in cybersecurity, and just thought it's something that our tech lawyer community should know about.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's a council that's going to be set up in, I think, launched in March this year. And the idea, I think it's all part of the UK, the government's cybersecurity strategy going forward, to ensure that we've got a safe online environment going forward. But what was interesting is that this is a body that's been set up to develop courses, provide accreditations and qualifications to people who want to work in the cybersecurity industry. Now, Orange, for one, is developing its expertise in cybersecurity. So I'm personally involved in that type of work on a day-to-day level. But if you think about it, a couple of years ago, in fact, even today, our cybersecurity laws are not in one place. They're a mishmash of networking laws, telecommunications law, data protection laws, etc. And also our corporate market laws all come together. And so you have lots of lawyers who do a little bit that all corresponds and works with the cybersecurity world. It will be interesting to watch this space, and I think as tech lawyers to keep an eye out within this industry. If people want to specialize in this industry, there may be a route into doing that. And equally, if you don't specialize in it, you ought to know what's going on within that market, within that sphere. I mean, in the future, if you want to market yourselves as cybersecurity lawyers, do you have to have a particular certificate, or can you do so on the basis we're doing today? Those are the questions that came to my mind.
Yeah, I don't think we've got time to really discuss that in any more detail. I just thought it'd be useful to highlight that for people, because it's something to keep an eye on, as you say, and it might be another string to the bow for our members. So that was terrific. Thanks so much. We'll call a halt to the discussions today. Many thanks to our panelists. If you fancy showing your appreciation for their wisdom and insights today, please go to buymeacoffee.com/SCL, where you can buy us a coffee, and the funds that are raised there are funneled back to the SCL student initiative, so it helps with all those kinds of activities we do with our students. You may also want to check out previous Tea and Tech sessions, which are available on the dedicated page on the SCL website, scl.org/tea and tech. With that, of course, I'd like to see you all this same time, same place next week. And I just want to mention one comment. Somebody did send in the comment and the link to the cat, the famous cat video. Now, we were considering doing that for this session, but we thought maybe not. Credibility might have been down the pan. So, but perhaps in hindsight, we should have done. So anyway, see you all this time next week. Thanks a lot. Bye.